do we get in Y10s? As you can remember in the last video, we talked about atomic structure and what a basic atom looks like. And remember, we said the nucleus is the inside of the atom, and inside the nucleus we have two little particles living there, two types, called protons that are positively charged and neutrons that are neutral. And then on the outside we have these tiny little particles of high energy that contains a lot of energy that moves around and spins quite quickly, and they are negatively charged and they are called electrons. So today, all those atoms, and remember we said all elements contains the same amount or similar structure of atoms. So we are going to look at the periodic table. So the periodic table is quite a masterpiece in itself because it's arranged according to the chemical properties and how they react with other atoms. And then we can see those little numbers that's on the periodic table. Those numbers that are linked to the atoms or these elements have a certain meaning, and we're going to learn about the meaning of those little numbers today. Okay, so periodic table is arranged in columns and then arranged in rows. And each column means something and each row means something. Okay, so the column is arranged, everything in every atom or element that's in the same column reacts in a certain way. So we know that column 1 is very reactive and they all have a certain amount of electrons on the outer layer. And then in rows, we know they all have the same amount of shells, and we'll talk about that, that's a bit later. Okay, so periodic table, if we look at an element, for instance, if we look at helium, and you will notice in the periodic table, all elements start with a capital letter, and then if they have a second letter, the second one will be a lowercase. So make sure that when you write elements down and their symbols, make sure that they always start with a capital letter, and if they have a second one, we change it to a lowercase. Alright, so helium on the periodic table, it has a number 2 at the top and a number 4 at the bottom. Some of those ones will be either a decimal number, but we kind of rounded to the biggest number, the bottom one. Okay, so that number, the 2, we'll just change that to, move that 2 to there. Okay, that 2 and that 4 there. That 2 tells you the number, so atomic number. So that's what that one is called. Atomic number. Okay, first of all, it tells us what number on the periodic table it is. So if you look at for number 20, you're going to try and find the element with 20, and you'll see the periodic table is quite easily because they go easily to read because their numbers go from left to right. Okay, so number 20 is calcium and will be on your left hand side. Helium is the second one on the periodic table. Okay, so atomic number, and then we have this number at the bottom, and that tells you atomic mass. So it tells you how much would one little atom weigh. So atomic mass, and some people say atomic weight, but it's the same thing. Okay, weight, we'll go weight as well. But also, what these numbers mean, and they are absolutely amazing, is that these numbers tell you what the atom looks like. So if we looked at an atom and we didn't know what it was, we could count the amount of particles, the amount of protons and the amount of electrons that's in, or the protons that's in the nucleus, and then that number we could use to find what the element is. So if we could zoom into this helium atom, we would find that inside the nucleus, remember we got thing that looks like this, an atom that looks like this. We have the nucleus inside. There would be 2 pluses in the middle. And remember we said most elements in their normal form will have the same amount of pluses and minuses. So if we have 2 pluses, we know that there'll be 2 minuses on the outside. So I'll put 2 minuses there on the outside. So we've got 2 pluses and 2 minuses because the atomic number is 2. And then that 4 at the bottom will tell us in total, if we looked at all of the stuff inside the nucleus, in total, everything inside will add up to 4. Right, so we've already got 2 pluses. What else could we put in the nucleus? The neutrons. So we've got 2 already, so we need 2 more neutrons to get to number 4. So we'll put 2 little dots there. Right, so that, if we didn't have this, and we just looked at this, we would zoom in and say, oh, we've got 2 pluses in the middle, so the 2 pluses in the middle must then tell us that that is helium. Right, so the atomic number tells you how many pluses and minuses we have, and then the atomic mass at the bottom tells us how many things in total there are in the nucleus. Another way of figuring that out is if you've got the 2 pluses inside, you take that number minus that number, and that difference between those 2 numbers will give you the amount of neutrons. Another example is if we have a lithium element from the periodic table, a lithium atom, and we need to find out what the atom looks like. We look at those numbers. Right, so that number on the top tells us how many pluses and how many minuses there are, how many protons and how many electrons. So if we have a 3 there, there'll be 3 pluses, 1, 2, 3, and we have 3 minuses, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 3 pluses and 3 minuses, and then that number 7 tells us in total there needs to be 7 things inside the nucleus. So if we already have 3, we need 4 neutrons. So that will be the 4 little 1, 2, 3, 4 dots. Okay, so in total we have 7, or what you could have done is 7 minus 3 would give you the 4. Okay, so we have 3 and 3 because that number tells us how many pluses and minuses, how many electrons and protons we have. And then that number tells us the atomic mass, tells us how many things are inside the nucleus.